Chapter 2. Amazingly, Clement Metternich, my old friend, was present, in quite a bit more casual dress than I had seen him before, speaking with the guards when he spotted me approaching.
Ha ha! Here is the gentleman I was speaking of. Officer of the watch, please remember this man is a good friend of the monarchy and of me personally. Offer him any and all assistance he may ever need.
The Imperial Counsel ordered them.
Yes, sir.
They snapped heels and saluted, their palms forward at their right elbows.
Welcome, Raileanu, welcome,
he said, putting his arm across my shoulders and directing me to the main entrance. The structure was austere, beautifully crafted from large blocks of white limestone, with exposed beams and framing, and enameled black steel appointments that resembled eagles. Lantern hangers and shutters were bound with wooden planks and blackened steel bands. The six-story structure featured a large round turret on its north corner, approximately 8 stories tall. Although no longer used, the original torch cups were meticulously maintained. The entire road path, which led around the house and intersected with the straight entrance path, was precisely fitted with light-colored slate. Round river rock was set in to cement with cement to fill the edges and any oddly shaped gaps. 2 tall, slender conifers stood on either side of the doors. Polished brass ring handle adornments graced the main double door, standing 12 feet tall with a rounded top. Royal guards opened the doors for us, and we were beckoned in by butlers. As I entered alongside Clement, he removed his arm from my shoulder and went towards a third butler off to our right. He spoke low and in German to him, and with those two combined, I couldn't make out what was being said. The butler bowed slightly, and all 3 of them walked away through one of the front rooms. "Is everything all right, sir?" I asked.
Yes. I instructed them to ensure we are not disturbed, and I will be unavailable until further notice. Also, I instructed one of them to retrieve your trunks and other items from the carriage driver, and make sure he is paid fully for his help,
he said, extending his left arm towards a door at the back of the foyer, to the left under a staircase which circled both sides of the room. Clement unlocked the door. It led into a narrow staircase that arced similarly to the one above, but this one led down. It was wide enough for only one, and while it was clear the stair was not regularly used, the lamps in polished brass alcoves along the stairway were lit, and the way was easily seen. The walls, stairs, and ceiling, by odor alone in this light, were in fact mahogany, masterfully carved in scenes which were obviously magical in nature, perhaps even magically created. The arc of the steps continued into a steep spiral with 3 full rotations and opened into a large round room made entirely of white marble with streaks of blue. Tapestries hung from bright brass rods all the way around, from the domed ceiling, likely 16 feet above the floor, each depicting a scene of magical historical significance from Central European history. The room was at least 75 feet in diameter. Thick rugs, lavishly embroidered with long furred animal skins, lined the floor, all except the massive fireplace and mantel, which was thick cedar planking smoothed and oiled to a sheen. Oil fire basins hung above 8 feet, suspended by well-smithed chains attached to silver arms extending about 6 feet from the walls, emerging from between the tapestries. Polished concave steel shields mounted to the arms at the walls in front of the tapestries increased the light in the space. Smooth, bright white limestone was used for the ceiling dome, making the space exceptionally well lit. There were 25 thick, pillow-buttoned, light brown leather chairs with armrests and high backs in a semicircle facing the fireplace. Small tables sat between each chair, again with thick cedar slab tops, covered with knit draping. Several large, low tables sat perpendicular to the fireplace in the center. When he realized, politely, I had finished surveying the room, Clement invited me to sit in a chair next to the hearth on the left side of the semicircle. On the table in front of me was a stack of extremely old books, with marker note pages sticking out, and a silver tray holding coffee and teapots, along with their associated condiments. Knowing my love of Turkish coffee, Clement had prepared one in a small cup and saucer and handed it to me. Then he sat on the edge of the table facing me and sighed.
You know why we became friends, and why I have funded your work over the last few years. I lost most of my magical ability as a young man, at only 17, not a month after graduation from our visiting school. Not many of us have lost any or all magical ability,
he stated plainly and paused. The rich foam of the coffee has such a powerful aroma. I had forgotten how much I enjoyed it, and I always use up my supplies on any trip too quickly. I waited patiently for him to begin again.
A book exists which only a few of us use, and now you as well, have knowledge of. We are the only two who are not in possession of magical ability who are in this circle. Here is that book.
He reached back, got the second book down in the stack, and handed it to me. It was a large codex, black leather, quite old, with heavy, expensive paper stock. There was no writing on the cover, spine, or back. I opened the cover. There was no writing on the first few pages either. I thumbed through half the volume and found no writing. Not that curious in reality, magical chroniclers often hid their writing from the non-magical, especially important works, and are therefore invisible to people like me.
When Professor Templeton was contacted by your father and apprised of the particulars he was experiencing in his illness, the professor contacted me. He is the one who brought me the book. Although I cannot read the text within, like you, it is here for safekeeping. Not even my father, brother, or emperor knows of its existence.
Again he paused, and cradling his short beard in his hand, he continued.
Any time someone encounters or is told of events or conditions which defy current magical and ordinary scholars' knowledge, the details are transcribed here. I can write in it, and the words are instantly also inscribed in the master volume, where they are compiled in a single place. The writing in this book vanishes, and in truth, nothing is retained in this book at all. No one can read this, nor any other version held in secure vaults worldwide. Your father's symptoms are similar to those recorded over 300 years ago, but no cause, cure, or explanation was found at that time. Several hundred people, magical and ordinary, were claimed by it.
He paused, guessing I would have questions at this point. My father's condition is not good, is it? I asked.
He continued. No. As we speak, the professor is traveling to where the main volume is located, to try and glean whatever he can to help. But no, I spoke to your mother through their portrait before you arrived. It is nightfall now, and he still has a high fever. No spell, charm, or potion available to them has shown any effect.
He said calmly,
I know you were due to travel by train to its northernmost stop, then to London to speak with the professor. But he has explained the course you must take to reach your father, and render whatever aid we can collect in the meantime. I know the travel required for this endeavor is painful to you, but speed is imperative. You must rune shift to London to meet the professor with whatever information he has gathered, and any supplies he may have. After you've regained your strength, head straight to the runestone 30 miles north of Vanville. This is as close and as fast as we can get you home.
Pardon, sir, but cannot a Ministry Warden or American Territorial Ranger immediately dislocate there to at least manage the prison and render aid for my father? Trying to be polite, but asking the obvious question that anyone here, along my way, or already here, would ask.
Your father has intentionally not corresponded with you directly about any of this. He spoke with the professor to send you word, so you would come hastily, but with no alarm to anyone else. Also, on the first day, he felt ill. He enacted the security measures in the prison. They are quite secure. The facility was already at the end of its usefulness, scheduled to move further north and west early next year, so no surprise guests are expected. The reason for these steps is directly related to the book and his ailment. If this is unknown magic, or some contagion unobserved by us, word can reach the shamans of central Mexico, who still support Aztecan groups who gain power from death and suffering. Additionally, the medicine men of the Comanche would certainly utilize it against Texians, as both groups fear this new nation.
He paused, poured himself a drink, and took a few sips of it, considering how to explain things in a helpful way.
If we send a high-level magical inquisitor, that alone can incite tensions. No, every possible tool will be brought to your father's aid and given to you before you leave London. I ideally wish it was possible for you to speak directly to your mother at this time. I would give anything to lend you this one weak ability I still retain. This is most urgent, as the professor and I feel you, being family, essentially ordinary in the eyes of all observers and a native-born Texan, are the only one who can go immediately with clear intent and assuage the concerns recorded for 1,000 years in this book.
He let out a heavy sigh at the end and looked me level in the eye.
I honestly believe it must be you, and it must begin today.
I understand, sir. I do not wish to linger here any longer than I must. I do wish to return your ring, which, a short time ago, was the reason I came here. Additionally, all my research is to be left in your keeping, including samples of all pertinent flora, fauna, and minerals. I did come across something of value. It is in a large glass jar amongst the trunk. Orokscat, completely suitable for an age ailment potion. If possible, can the sale of it be sent to me? I have no idea of what troubles I will encounter on this trip, and I may need additional funds. If not, please deposit in the appropriate bank in London, please. I paused to give more thought to what was relevant within the time constraints now upon me.
Definitely, my friend, he began. I am financing this entire trip for you as the interests of us all are at stake here. I will also be employing your old acquaintance Monica Binder to collect and begin publishing your work immediately. She is already in our house, working with my wife, Levan, to compile our family portraits and genealogy into a work using her transcription and artistry skills through magical conjuration, which will be a gift to the family this Christmas season.
Very good, sir. Shall we have time for lunch before I depart?
Yes, indeed, it is being laid on as we speak. It shouldn't be more than 30 minutes more, and it will be ready,
he said, slightly smiling.
And yes, Monica will be in attendance.
You know our history and difficulties well, my friend. I will be grateful to see her again, if only for a polite meal with your family. That was as overtly gracious as I dared be, even to a close friend in private. He stood up, slapping his knees, and turned around to the stack of books still on the table. He opened one, which was a book box, so it wasn't actually a book. From it, he laid several items on the small table next to me. A small coin purse made of dark leather with copper-colored stitching in a diamond pattern, with copper hardware enclosure, and a copper keeper chain with a clasp. Next was a finely tooled silver pocket watch, which seemed to have a keeper and chain, both made of sterling silver. The third was a small flask with the house crest from his secondary school in Austria. Not wanting to forget, I removed the large ring I had been wearing on my left index finger, which he had lent me at the start of my work nearby. I handed it to him, thanking him for it and his consideration of our shared malady. He put it in the small pocket on his waistcoat and picked up the coin purse.
This is something I have made, using your knowledge learnt these last 10 years, combining your work understanding of how to use elemental ores, magical creatures' products, and charms or enchantments which wizard kind and we can use. None of these will be helpful or valuable were they to be found by unscrupulous persons.
He reached over and picked up a coin purse.
This coin purse is made from a 10-year-old hedgehog hide who died of natural causes and is stitched with copper nickel wire. I have found that using copper from different ore bodies, along with the charm on this, that anything placed in this purse will be sent to the exact copy, made from the same animal and ore bodies of copper, and vice versa. So you can send me small items, and I you. In fact, the distance of separation has made no change in ability, as though the materials are bound at an elemental level, more so than any applied magic. This is how I will fund your trip and also keep your reserves safe while you are in the territories you are visiting. If you can send me ore from the lands of Texas, I will endeavor my silversmiths to fashion a small box, and we can try it on your return. Second is this,
he said, setting the purse back in the hollow book and picking up the watch.
It was made for me by a Swiss lady, whom my wife and I were in school with. It has 6 functions.
Clicking the clasp open, it revealed what looked like a watch with 5 dials, and the opposite side was a liquid-filled compass.
This side, which looked like a compass, he began, is in fact a compass. It will always point north. However, if you hold it open, cupped in both hands, it will point to the nearest runestone you can use for travel. Now, I know you are accustomed to runestones allowing you and me to dislocate, but without full magical powers, we are never certain to which runestone we have shifted. I have spoken with Professor Templeton about this for some years, off and on, and he has discovered if we put a drop of blood on this specific rune on the dial, which points to the one you need for your trip, it will send you to the nearest runestone which also has a drop of your blood. It will work only for you, and only for 3 months' time. This is adequate because Templeton sent me a vial of your blood from the accident when he attended your recovery when you were a boy. This morning I sent my younger cousin, who is young and virile, to dislocate from here to London near Professor Templeton's home, and on to the runestone to west of the old Spanish copper mine, 30 miles north of Wormville. He has also been instructed to stay and look after your parents until you arrive. His name is Atreus Metternich. He is quite capable and has served as a captain in the cavalry regiment for several years here. His horsemanship and resourcefulness will be notable, I am sure.
He set the compass down next to me. This is absolutely incredible. I am speechless. After all these years of contenting myself with ordinary travel and finding the beauties and walking holidays, horseback riding and such, I am relieved in this dire circumstance. I can return home to my father and mother so promptly. I stuttered in amazement. Rune shifting is so truly so hard on me. Most of the time I've tried it, I actually end up farther from where I intended than if I had just walked. The considerations on my part, sir, are so generous. I am so thankful to God for knowing you and for the advancements we share and discoveries we can continue to contribute to research often ignored by current academics. Clement continued.
The other features of this watch are as follows. The 5 dials, as indicated by the markings around each, are for moon phase, storm direction, magnetic interference, and the clock, of course. The 5th dial is similar to the ring I lent you. It is also the only function which requires a winding knob to work properly. It must be wound each day, and the hands will indicate how many hours and minutes it can conceal you from non-magical persons and animals. You are not completely invisible, but an unimportant distortion or perhaps mirage in their subconscious. Anyone in sight range will not detect you, your sounds, sense, or even your shadow. However, the perception blocking ability quality only lasts up to 12 hours. Its magical mechanical properties require the internal motion of lunar stone and magma-formed quartz discs to be wound. I have used one for a year, and its function is flawless.
Good Lord above, sir. The gravity of the items is making something abundantly clear to me now. These are rather expensive, meticulously crafted, and rare devices made from ore, which few have even considered manufacturing. Sir, I am beginning to understand my part is quite a bit more than helping a long-time friend return to his ill father. I promise the utmost demeanor and attention to all parts of this trip, and its aims as I can gather.
Finally,
He said, closing and setting the watch into the book box and retrieving the flask.
this silver work flask has but one magical property. Based on your descriptions and my research on the Texas region of the United States, it may be your true lifesaver. It is always full of clean water. It can only hold 2 pints, but its sister is located in a basin which rests under the waterfalls on a ledge near Davos, Switzerland, and is permanently fixed. The ledge it rests on is 300 feet above the valley floor below. I was exploring some nearby caves and noticed that the spot was always wet and not visible to anyone but those standing next to it. The waterfall is fed by snowmelt runoff all year and transmits the water to the flask consistently.
Truly, sir, no greater gift could any native-born Texan receive, I said humbly. The times even hardened woodsmen from eastern states have found themselves bushwhacked by nothing short of thirst cannot be counted. I fidgeted and shifted my weight in the chair, becoming increasingly nervous that more was happening, and I had a growing feeling that I needed to return home quickly.
This is your gift, my friend, and the coin purse. You can now assume the tenured professor of my employ henceforth. Professor at large of magical and ordinary studies. I will support you without end on a regular stipend of whatever you require, based on our years of friendship and your numerous academic contributions, which you have produced on your own. Know the balance of your book sales and valuable horticultural finds, as always, will be put on your account in London as well.
He grew a wide, open smile and said,
You can accompany me to lunch, specially prepared for your difficult rune shift ahead, as Professor Raileanu Tellafrog.
I'm sorry, I stammered. What?
I have spoken with the Board of Regents of your school. Your work has been used in every associated class in the last 5 years. Every professor has found and included at least one element in their coursework that came from your discoveries. Some of those courses have not had new elements added in decades,
he said, with a wide, proud smile.
They are the ones who suggested it to the board, who contacted me.
Clement stood, looking down as he walked over to the huge fireplace with his left hand raised.
I am sorry, there is no agreement on your teaching. Only a few suggested it, and the majority still refuse to allow it. They want you to continue your work, and the results of the last few years have convinced them of its value. I concurred with their decision only yesterday.
He dropped his hand and raised his chin, placing his hands behind his back and straightening. It is entirely likely that at this point, my mouth was agog, like an imbecile, without me realizing it. Flies could have been coming and going in and out of it, and I would not have known or cared. Even more amazingly, it occurred to me Monica would be at the lunch, and while my shock would undoubtedly prevent me from mentioning it aloud, my friend, 15 years my senior, my compatriot in having lost magical ability, would tell everyone. Right now, at least, the shock of my father's illness, the ability to travel as a real wizard again, sort of, the weight of the incredible gifts, and why they are to be used now seemed a bit crowded with all this additional input. I genuinely did not know how to respond. Surely I had something to say, if not offer. Of course, the orange-violet striped trumpet orchids. Clement had not been able to consistently speak directly through portraits. The regularity of his ability was not discernible, and it had troubled him for a long time. He could almost always hear the other party speaking, but he was not always able to respond. Sir, I do have one discovery made recently which may, in a small way, encourage you and your family. The rare orange-violet striped trumpet orchid grows near the lake on the steep edges, which are well watered and can work much like the magical portraits for normal wizard kind. If ones from the same family root ball are raised in other areas and kept healthy, you can speak into them, and the other orchid, say at your ancestral home estate, can repeat it for magical people to hear. You, conversely, can understand their speech from yours. I have a pair in my trunk for which I had thought of you specifically. They are labeled as such. Please, allow me to give those to you, so you may hear your father and mother's voices any time you choose. I sat right on the edge of the seat, both my hands out, feeling my gift inadequate when measured against his help for me.
This is why, my friend, you are now a professor. You are researching and solving issues which can benefit wizards, but especially non-magical people of wizard heritages who truly need it, he said, quite seriously. Now, let us go upstairs, have a hearty meal, and then see you off.
Sir, have you told Monica, I wondered, about the new title?
No, honestly, I have considered it for some time, but it was only decided yesterday. Would you like to tell her, or would you like... He started. As Imperial Counsel, I can assign anyone I wish to such posts with the blessing of the Board of Regents.
No, sir, please. Let me attend to my parents and return without difficulty before I inform her. I don't want either of us to concern ourselves with anything but the crucial tasks at hand.
Very well, I understand, he acquiesced. Let us head upstairs and enjoy our last meal together for some time.
He stood and began to move towards the stairs, with me right behind him. After coming out into the foyer, we proceeded towards the back of the house and into the large dining hall. The places were set for 7, and Monica, Mrs. Laverne Metternich, and Clement Metternich's 3 children were waiting for us. As always, and as the unmistakable fool for her I am, I had paused too long staring at Monica, my hint being when she smiled as she looked down and away. The meal was brought out, venison and mushrooms, carrots, potatoes, and a side which made little sense given the rest. Sauerkraut, all on the finest polished silver. My friend spotted me looking at it confused and said,
That, my friend, is for you. I know you like it, and the chance of you having a meal included that is properly prepared where you're going is quite low.
Wine was served, along with a sweet cake at the end, accompanied by a delicious aromatic Turkish coffee. The children asked me more than a few silly questions about America, their mother giggling lightly at most of them. Mrs. Laverne Metternich was a kindly, intelligent, and powerful lady in her own right. No doubt most of my friend's successes can be attributed to her cunning and wholly charming nature. Fully trained in Austrian law, fluent in French, Italian, Flemish, and English, and precisely finished for every courtly occasion, it's true in my company, and possibly only in my company, allowed common talk and the children to be silly. She was over 10 years Clement's junior, and her children were schooled with her and their mistress-instructor. The travel requirements of the counselor meant they were never in one place for long. They were oldest to youngest, Stefan at 14, Danielle at 11, and Daphne aged 7. To their parents' relief, I think, none were magical. It is becoming increasingly complex to have a family in such a high station that combines the magical and the ordinary. Invariably, it leads to questions of schooling abroad or their absence. They also cannot be themselves, which causes its own problems. Had they been of the royal family, the discretion around the whereabouts of children would have been more accepted by non-magical inquisitors. Additionally, 99% of ordinary people are unaware of the magical population. Royal families from all nations are aware and support the separation for the sake of all. "When must you leave for America?" Monica asked. I looked at her, and it must have been obvious again I was trying to avoid looking at her and being ensnared by her beauty for all to witness. "As soon as our meal is completed, I'm afraid," I began. "I do not wish to leave my parents alone with this illness any longer than necessary. Though leaving the company of my friends, and of course you, is always difficult." Glancing around, it's clear it was blatantly obvious. Again. Danielle and Daphne snickered. So yes, it is uncontrollable for me with Monica. As I prepared to leave, saying goodbye to all, the Metternichs turned back into their parlor for a moment. All except her. I stood as straight and professionally as I could, hands behind my back. She looked past me, seeing that the family had rounded the corner out of sight. She reached around my side and took my hand from behind my back, holding it. Honestly, the rush of emotions from touching her hand almost made me rethink leaving. But I must. I looked right into her eyes. Again, the description of her beauty and power over me in her soul and her form will forever be mine alone. I could tell she perceived everything about me, and none of it needed to be said by either of us. She leaned up and gave me a small kiss on the cheek, at the same time putting something in my hand. Prying my eyes away from her, I looked at my hand. It was a small silver locket. In it was a tiny picture of her. "I know you cannot speak through it, as magical people can, but I don't want you to forget me, for I will not notice even the sunshine until I can see you again," she said quite seriously, looking intently at me. I, my voice breaking, mouth dry. "I will return to you as soon as I can." I took her hands in mine. "I have never been able to go a day without thinking of you, not even for a day. Thank you for this." Clement came around the corner again and smiled, looking at his feet for a moment. I set her hands down, both of us smiling.
"Shall we set a date, then?"
he choked, hopefully. "No, sir, not yet. We can save that discussion for my return." "Indeed," Monica agreed, smiling as well.
"Well, Raileanu, we should head towards the center of town where the runestone resides. Also, if it helps, I have a few things which might be of use," Clement said.
"Goodbye, Raileanu," Monica said as she walked away, looking back at me. "Not goodbye, only farewell for a time," I said to her. Right or not, I burned her smile at that moment into my mind. As she watched, she could see the smile in the corner of my mouth. She told me later she knew what I was doing.
"Let's go,"
Clement suggested. "After you, sir." And out the front doors, across the open yard, and out the front gate we walked. McCourt was waiting outside on a lamppost. He spread his wings when he caught sight of me. I didn't know exactly where we were going, so I told him to follow. He gave a little squeak and crouched, and jumped into the air, circling us until we picked a direction to walk. There were so many things in my mind now that I could barely concentrate on anything but following Clement. It occurred to me we had walked down 2 different streets, maybe a quarter of a mile, before I could think clearly again. I had not been in this part of town before and could not remember the way back to the hotel or the royal house either. I did detect the leftovers of lunches that had been cooked in the houses as we passed by. The grain storehouse had workers stacking bags and barrels of stores. The thump of dried grain sacks and the dust they put off their own distinctive aroma. Below that I could sense a cold, musty scent, and pick up the dripping of water into a deep stone place. With another few sniffs, I knew it was where the beer was stored. Much of it was the same beer I had the night before in the hotel restaurant. Sir, do we know the rune shift will work for McCourt as well? He is the only owl who has imprinted on me, as I was still in possession of full magical abilities when he came to me. I cannot bind to any other owl, I asked with concern.
We have no reason to suspect otherwise. From our research, the event of rune shifting is identical to dislocating, only on a mechanical level. Rather than focusing the spirit and body on a familiar location. We are nearing the center of town. There is a narrow 4-story building that is 500 years old. I don't believe you know this bit of our history,
Clement began, glancing back at me.
It is built on a small narrow ridge of stone which sits in the middle of the river. A bridge only wide enough for one carriage extends from each side of the island to the shores. It was originally built for the king to imprison and torture suspected witches and warlocks.
We turned down a couple of streets, speaking quietly, as by now vendors and merchants had their storefronts open and wares out on the roadway for customers. The streets weren't full, but were busy.
They believed being surrounded by water would isolate the imprisoned and give the inquisitors more power over them. That is the common reason given, as even the literature of the time, as seen in the Malus Maleficarum, stated their weakness around running water. In truth, the reason it was selected was that the rune wheel carved atop this outcropping of stone was clearly, to them, pagan, and should be covered. After the magical accords were reached almost 2,000 years ago, most of the ancient runic language documents that would allow for transcription or translation were locked up by the various visiting ministries, or later by the Vatican. When the current royal families began consolidating power and isolating magical influences on the world from the ordinary after the Wars of Reformation, we were able to retain this property in the royal registry and protect it. In fact, it is a stop in the first year of study for pupils here in Austria studying magical history.
Clement paused and approached the locked gate and the guard for the bridge he had spoken of. The bridge had once elegant arched beam supports from the crag of stone in the center of the river to the bank where we were, set securely into large holes cut into the side of the river's retaining wall. It was as he described, 4-story, pale white, rough-cut stone, carefully built onto a narrow projection of stone in the center of the river. The bridge on our side was no more than 5 feet wide, made of an oaken timber frame with iron bolts and braces, but the decking looked to be newer ash, held in place with large rosebud spikes. The bridge was possibly 30 feet long and ended at a tall double door with similarly forged iron fittings and annulus door rings. Wood shingles topped the high, peaked roof over the bridge. The sides were solid wood framing, approximately 3 feet high, with 2-inch round wooden bars staved into the lower solid framing, which supported the sides of the roof. The spacing of these was no wider than a man's hand. The guard unlocked the gate, which was significant, an inch off the stone pavings all the way to the edge of the roof framing. He shut and locked it behind us and sat back down on his bench in the small guard shack. McCourt arrived and roosted on my shoulder. The bridge planking was newer, as were all the spikes. Once on the bridge, looking down its length, I could detect unevenness and a slight tilt, not uncommon for a long timber structure. We walked to the doors at the end of the bridge. Clement turned an annulus, and we entered. This floor was all open around a central circular structure with one entrance on the side facing us. I could see through it that there was an identical doorway on the other side, surely for the bridge on the other side, leading to the opposite bank of the river. Within were several iron rings along the walls at about 8 feet in height, some with chains and shackles still hanging from them. To the left was a high wooden bench, like a judge or magistrate might use, I suppose. In front of it was a bank of 3 wrought iron barred cages, with the doors on our side all open and keys still in the lock mechanisms. The stains on the ground, I dared not consider their sources, prompted me to intentionally begin breathing through my mouth only. Clement walked toward the doorway in front of us and began down the stone spiral stairs inside. I followed. We stopped at the next lower level, which was still mostly an above-ground space within the building. Exiting the stairwell, I got a good look at the space.
This is where many tortures and confessions were extracted of those accused of witchcraft,
Clement said, waving his hand broadly about.
Please, take a look around.
Cages lined every inch of the walls in this room. About 2/3 of this floor was carved out of the rocky island itself to make the structure. Thin, horizontal, rectangular windows lined the tops of the walls, spaced about 6 feet apart. They were simple frames with frosted glass and were not intended to open. With only 6 inches of glass, they were obviously designed to allow some light to pass through, but not to permit entrance or escape. Tall shelves wound between the cages along the exterior walls and the ones against the circular stairwell in the center. Those shelves held devices and tools designed to carry anguish. That's all I can say. It was terrible. They also held things I had heard of but never seen in person. Hex jars. Mummified cats, toads, dogs, birds, and rats. Maybe evidence against prisoners. Sir, why did the witch hunts of Sapiri become so vicious? I asked. The study of magical persecution is limited in normal schooling to the cases in each nation's history, and I sadly knew none of the cases here.
It isn't far from where the Protestant Revolution began, and in many regions throughout Germany and Austria, the wars of the Holy Roman Empire's Church against the Protestants boiled into all-out war. Using witch hunts was a way the Catholic forces felt their persecution would be less reviled, but many times it simply caused more upheaval,
Clement stated soberly. He walked over to a small stool, dusted it off with his hand, and sat down, looking around at all of it.
In almost every case, this building dealt directly with their enemies, and no magical people were involved or hurt. The fear it caused was no less painful, and it stands as a warning of the effects of our kind interfering in the lives of the ordinary. Even the most change-driven teenage students leave here with a different mindset. It is invaluable, I believe, to solid education and a responsible magical community going forward.
We both tried to remember the things here. I could tell. But we stored it in the part of the mind you hope to never really need. After a few moments, Clement stood.
Now let us proceed downstairs to the lowest level and start you on your way.
Down a shorter set of stairs, this time to the basement floor, we had to stop long enough to light a lamp, as there were no windows or natural light here at all. We continued to the bottom, and the dim lamp light revealed a storeroom, with cobwebs and a thick layer of dust covering everything piled around. The stone floor, chiseled out of the rock and unfinished, was also uneven, as it was never meant to be used or occupied regularly. Having lived now 24 years without magic, it was easy for me to appreciate the innumerable hours spent hammering and chiseling by ordinary people to create this place. Clement led me to the opposite side of the circular stairwell. Along the path between benches and racks, I noticed 5 shallow pits, maybe 4 feet in diameter, with iron cage lids. After everything else I witnessed, I didn't want an explanation of those. I could guess. On the backside, we came to the rune wheel. It was also carved from the original rock, and the ground surrounding the 4-foot pedestal was smooth and precise, showing a magical creation, not the hammer and chisel work elsewhere. A heavy canvas tarp covered it, with a few broken animal cages on top. Clement sent the lamp on top and reached into his coat pocket.
I almost forgot, he started. Here is some documentation I made for you stating you are an academic working for the Imperial Royal Commission to study indigenous medicines of the Americas. It also states that you are to be afforded all the rights and privileges of a foreign dignitary in the United States. Your name, in case it helps, has been listed as Randall Frog. Any magical or Austrian official will be able to cross-reference who you are, but it may still be helpful. I apologize I wasn't able to add your new title to these documents in time.
He moved the lamp, the cages, and the tarp. It was a magically carved wheel for certain. The inside cuts were made with precision that cannot be matched even today with modern tooling, and it was beautifully crafted.
If you are ready, Clement said, take the compass I gave you and open it, cupped in both hands.
He used his hands to demonstrate. I complied, and sure enough, the compass pointed to the rune stone wheel, and as I moved around it, the needle selected one rune in particular. I removed my left hand from it, and the needle did indeed point north.
As soon as you are ready, trace the rune with your right index finger and you will rune shift, he said. And yes, your owl will be perfectly fine. His value to you is hardly anyone but me can grasp. You will need him, I guarantee.
Clement, if you can promise to keep it quiet, any copper or other ores I send you in the coin purse, you know now what to do with it, don't you? I said, counting on his ability to perceive. He smiled as widely as I have ever seen, nodding.
Yes, I do.
I closed the watch, tucked it securely inside my vest pocket, took a deep breath, and exhaled. I glanced at McCourt, who returned the look but shifted his gaze forward again, unconcerned and wise.